Hello, Maestro Tausk. It's wonderful to have you back here again. And I'm wondering, here we are in Pyatt Hall, and you were just over at the Orpheum rehearsing for this weekend's masterful concert. And how are things going?
Things are going really well. We have an incredibly beautiful program, but doing a Mahler symphony, I always wish for another couple of weeks of rehearsal time. Because in a Mahler symphony, there's so much to be found and discovered. And it's such a powerful, emotional work, but at the same time, as composition, so incredibly detailed that we could spend weeks and weeks on that piece. But of course, we have a lot of other things to do as well.
Absolutely. Well, I was visiting with some of the VSO musicians in the hallway today between rehearsals, and they said, we're paying attention to detail. The Mahler requires detail. But it seems to me that Mahler Fifth also requires a sort of an emotional awakening. And that seems to me to be the thread in this weekend's concerts.
Absolutely true, absolutely true. So if you look at the Mahler's repertoire in general, there's a huge development and changing, and with what he's writing changes the course of history, musical course of history, and especially in his Fifth Symphony. And you're talking about the emotional journey, and I think that's a key concept of the Fifth Symphony, actually. So at the heart of the symphony, there's this adagietto. It's a very slow, very beautiful movement for string orchestra and harp, but it's not sad. It's not tragic. It's full of hope and full of love. And he wrote this as a love letter for his wife. So it's instead of writing words, he wrote this music, and it comes at a key moment in the symphony, a symphony that actually starts quite full of fate and struggle and contrasts, and then with this adagietto, it changes. And it changes into something that is very optimistic and very hopeful, even though it's slow and it sometimes becomes really emotional. But it's always full of, let's say, a positive longing. And then that translates into the last movement, which is incredibly optimistic music. And I think that's, as you say, at the heart of this program, and perhaps also at the heart of what we have been doing this season. But if we look at the program, what else we have there for our audience is actually connected to that adagietto, because before the break, we will play two pieces that are just for string orchestra. And the first work is by Anna Klein, and that's just lovely, lovely music. And in a way, intensely sad, but also intimate. She wrote this piece in memory of her mother, and it's very continuously moving, and it doesn't stop. And once you get into that motion of the music, it brings you from one moment to the other. And I think it's an extraordinary piece.
It always reminds me of a meditation.
Yes, it's very much a meditation.
It's a meditation, a prayer,
yes,
or a meditation.
Very much.
That kind of unfolds,
yes,
and unfolds,
yes,
and unfolds.
That's beautifully said, yes. And so the Anna Klein. And then the second piece we're playing is, this is actually, I brought this to Vancouver. It's a Dutch composer called Hogenberg. You have to practice. The G is very throaty in Dutch. And he's written a piece for string orchestra and viola solo. And we have this wonderful Hang Wei, our principal viola. He joined the orchestra not so long ago.
At the beginning of the
At
pandemic.
the beginning of the pandemic, he joined the orchestra, and we're very lucky to have such wonderful musicians and such incredibly strong leaders. Hang Wei is, even though he's been relatively short with the orchestra, very much part of the orchestra, and defines the sound of the orchestra in a strong way. And it's wonderful to have him as a soloist in this relatively short piece by Hogenberg, which is strongly related to Bartók in not only in the structure and the notes, but also in the atmosphere. It's kind of on one side melancholic, but on the other side dancing, and it has this playfulness as well. The middle part of that piece is actually a solo for the viola,
For the viola.
like in interior monologue with yourself. That's a wonderful piece, and those two string pieces, in a perhaps rather particular way, then connect to that adagietto of Mahler's grand symphony number 5.
It's such an emotional program.
Yes.
Everything is filled with emotion.
Yes.
And this layering of
Yes.
emotion, an unfolding of emotion. And I find it really interesting that you speak of the contrast between the Anna Klein and the Hogenberg.
Yes.
And also then how the Mahler shifts
Absolutely.
halfway. And, if we look at our full season, which we are almost completing now, our 103rd season at the VSO, in some ways, that describes our entire season. There were many prayers as we began. There was much excitement as we
Yes.
began.
Yes.
There was an unfolding.
Yeah.
And when we think about, our first few concerts and then building to Beethoven 9,
Absolutely.
that feels a little bit like
Yeah,
the Mahler,
yeah.
a little bit like that arc.
Absolutely.
So it's wonderful to have all of that content in this very, very special performance.
Yeah,
Very much
And
so.
I do believe that the journey we'll make is to be found in this program, and it's fascinating to realize that that's actually what Mahler also said, that music should contain everything that goes on in the world, not just the notes, something bigger, something grander. And I love the way you actually connect that to our season and hopefully to all the seasons that will follow.
Yes, I wonder about some of the descriptors you've used. You've used love and hope, and I wonder if, well, first of all, in response to what you just said, I think that this feeling and Mahler's intention of that this is for everyone, everyone will find a place, is especially important now that the world and we have experienced this global pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely.
We know now how important music is to
Yes.
our emotional well-being,
Yes.
and we can find it at the
Yes.
VSO.
Yeah.
How does love and hope and optimism and ambition help shape the 22-23 season, our 104th anniversary?
Well, that's a really good question, because we've actually been looking for connections between the music we make and the world around us, because it's become so clear that music is a really important element of our world, and can be very close to people, can be very personal, and as you say, give hope and inspiration. And so what we've done in next season is to find that connection between music and the world around us. And now, being in Vancouver is one of the things that are incredible is nature. And
Yes.
so we're surrounded by the most beautiful nature on Earth, and we're very lucky to have that. So finding the connection between music and nature, music and the environment, how can we take care of the world around us in a better way with music? How can music actually give insight or make us think about how we treat nature, how much we need nature, how much we are connected to nature. And so we've put together a program where it's not only the four seasons. Mm-hmm. It is Tchaikovsky's Winter Symphony, but not only just that. It's not just the changing of the seasons. It's also finding works in special projects that reflect on what is happening with the world around us, and how can we act more responsible? How can music help us to realize what's going on? And I think in that sense, music becomes something that can be very useful, not just beautiful, not just to enjoy, but can make us think and can start a conversation. And I think that's important.
And that's been the role of music historically.
Yes.
Often reflecting the environment, reflecting the political environment,
yes.
Reflecting the social environment.
Yes.
And we have chosen to reflect our planet.
Absolutely.
And we have the two new series,
Yeah.
Discovery and Our Planet.
Yeah.
And what I really appreciate about the repertoire selected for Our Planet is that it's holding up a mirror, as you say, to the crisis we have on the planet, which we have felt here in British Columbia, very much so, and around the world. But it's also celebrating our planet and the beauty in which we live. I listened recently this week to an interview by Sir David Attenborough, and he talked about the fact that, you know, for how many years, since 1950, so many years, he has been celebrating nature, not just focusing on the doom and gloom, but celebrating it so that more people become engaged in the beauty of nature. And I think we're doing a little bit of that.
I think so. I hope so.
I believe we are. Yeah. And I love also that we're bringing in film and other ways to celebrate our environment.
Yeah.
So as you look forward to, as you stand on the podium in this concert, especially with Mahler's Fifth, what are you shining your spotlight? What's your North Star for 22-23 at the VSO? Are there some, we've talked about the planet, we've talked about the Discovery series. Are there some guest artists? Is there some repertoire that you would say, I've always wanted to do this? Everybody must come to hear this.
I think it's in every program. It's such a hard question to choose, and I could not choose. Thinking about the soloists, we have incredible soloists, and I always say, when I say I'm so happy that my hero from my youth, Perlman, is coming to Vancouver to play with us.
Yes.
But then I'm actually thinking, but in our festival, our Planet Festival, we have the pianist Hélène Grimaud, who is a very strong believer in making a strong statement about nature,
about the environment,
and about the environment. So, but she is one of the most beautiful musicians we have on our planet. So, and that goes on and goes on. And we're combining, for instance, Schumann's Spring Symphony with The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, a spring program, but incredible music. I could never choose. I just feel that celebrating music and celebrating the VSO with Mahler's Fifth Symphony, it feels like we're opening up again as a full symphony orchestra, and reaching out to next season somehow.
I think it's exactly that. It's like an enormous podium to next season.
Yes.
So what a wonderful way to begin to close this very challenging and yet optimistic season. And then, of course, we will always continue to create, curate, and connect our irresistible experiences. And we know that we invite all of our audience members to join us in the concert hall and online. So thank you so much, Otto.
Thank you.